Good morning, everyone. I will welcome council, administration, and those guests in the gallery. We're here in person, and welcome to those who are watching on our Zoom platform or maybe watching later on our YouTube video. Welcome all. I will call this regular meeting of council of the municipality of Jasper to order for October 8th, 2024. It's 9:30 a.m. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Deputy Mayor Demora.
Your Worship, thank you very much. I'd like to add a new item under new business. I'd like to add another item under new business 6.2, an update on debris removal in the community. Please and thank you.
Any other suggested alterations to today's agenda? Sorry. Any other suggested alterations to today's agenda? I will call the well, perhaps before I call the question on the amendment, Mr. Given, other than in general terms, is there anybody available to give an update on debris removal this morning?
Your Worship, I think I understand the nature of the question Councillor Demota intended to raise.
If you then I will accept a motion from Deputy Mayor Demota that we add one item identified as 6.2 to today's agenda, being an update on debris removal, an update from administration. All those in favor? I'm sorry, go ahead.
My apologies. May I add a second agenda item in camera?
All right, this motion's on, so
Yeah, sorry.
we can do that. Yeah. So this is the motion to have 6.2. Any debate on that? All those in favor? There are none opposed. That's carried. And Councillor Wilson, you wish to add another matter?
Yeah, may I add in camera 10.2 and the legal matter?
Thank you for that. I think that is a motion to further amend today's agenda by the addition of item 10.2, an in-camera legal matter. And that would necessitate a change to the organizational meeting to 10.1. I will call that question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And may I have then a motion to approve today's agenda as amended, and those amendments are the addition of agenda item 6.2, 10.2, and renumbering 10 to 10.1. Oh, I see Councillor Waxer. Are you making that motion? Thank you, Councillor Waxer. Any debate on that? All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So we have an agenda for today's meeting. We have before us for approval the minutes of the regular meeting of October 1st, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion, please, the council approve the minutes of the October 1st, 2024 regular council meeting as presented. Councillor Melnick, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, delegations. We have one scheduled delegation, and it's the Jasper Senior Site, Janice Marks to present. And just for those in the gallery, at this point in the agenda, we do invite people to speak to council about matters on the agenda. So if there are others who are interested in speaking to council about any matter on today's agenda, I will again invite you to do that once we hear from the delegation that did us the courtesy of giving us advance notice of their desire to be here, so welcome, Mrs. Marks, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland and Council, for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I'm representing the Jasper Senior Society as well as the seniors of the community of Jasper. First, I would like to recognize the efforts and hard work that took place and continues to take place during this very trying time in our community. And I know some of you have lost your homes, and our hearts go out to you. I'm so sorry for your loss. We thank you, Mayor Ireland, for being there and steering the ship. The community is now in a state of recovery, restoring and rebuilding. A monumental task, to say the least. And as a result of this work at hand, there's a need for more space and resources. And as a result of that need, the Jasper Senior Society has been approached and asked to relocate from the Seniors Lounge. Now, this might seem as, a logical approach to some, but the reality is we have been approached at least 3 times in the past, asking us to relocate and not really having or being offered suitable alternative. And so this is nothing new. This is not a result of just this disaster that we've experienced. So in view of the fact that there's been an obvious need for more administrative space for some time, why was this not taken into consideration when planning current renovations? The Senior Citizens Room, as it was originally called, came to be within the confines of the Activity Center because of the Jasper School District number 3063 bylaw 61, 1974. And when the facility was built. So it had, one of the provisions in order to build this facility was that it would include, one of the items was senior center. So that's how we came to be, and that's why we've been here ever since. So we could argue we have a legal right, but we don't want to go there, and that's not necessary. It just isn't, it's more than that. When you look at the area that we occupy, we're a dot on the map on the activity center layout, and an even smaller one when you put that dot on the map of Jasper. It's very small, but it's all we have. We value it, and we utilize the space to the best of our ability and for the good of the community. It's very important. It's more than just a place for monthly meetings. It's an ideal location for activities, socializing, coffee chats, informal and formal discussions, all in an effort to offer support in dealing with the mental well-being of seniors, which is more of an issue than ever. The objectives of the Jasper Senior Society in part is also to promote the interests of seniors as well as help coordinate the services available. Having a location that is our own or specific is most important. And it appears that any other suggestions that come to mind where we might live, they don't suit our needs. We have to access on a scheduled basis. We lose our flexibility and we lose our independence. We become, well, we impose on others. And when you get older, that's something you really don't want to do. It becomes a fear in life. We don't want to be in a position. We're willing to share our space when we can. And one example is the Jasper Men's Shed, which they use our space weekly for their meetings until they can access their pending accommodation. The current proposal from the municipality does not indicate how long they would occupy the lounge or if we'd ever get it back, and we fear we wouldn't. We do have a lease. In summing up, Mr. Mayor, it's very stressful being in this situation once again. We want to take part in the conversation regarding our future. We want to take part in restoring our community. And what is being proposed is, well, it just seems more destructive than constructive on our behalf. We provide a service. We don't want to be put on the sidelines. We do have a place in the community and we do have a purpose. We're all trying to stay on track on that road to recovery, difficult as it is. Basically, we're saying we're not prepared to move. Don't put the onus on the seniors to be the solution to your problem. you've got a bigger problem than just our little space. We ask that you revisit and reconsider what administration may be bringing to you as a proposal. There was some discussion at our meeting yesterday, and we had a very large delegation. One of the suggestions was, well, there's lots of room in the library. Maybe we do need to do some reconfiguring. You can come have your meetings in our place. It's an alternate. We're open to sharing. We want people to use that space. We're not there just because. We do have a purpose. So please revisit and reconsider that proposal. It just does not fit. It does not allow us to maintain our place of dignity and purpose in the community, because we are just being moved and shuffled about at will. That's all I ask.
Thank you for that presentation, Mrs. Marks. I can turn it first to questions from council if you prefer, although I think Director Reed has been more intimately engaged in this than council. If there is anything from Director Reed that require that. Questions from councillors for Mrs. Marks as representative of the senior society and seniors in Jasper generally, as she indicated? Councillor Wilson.
My apologies for not ever attending or coming to visit the senior center. I have not been in there, so I would be interested in knowing how large the space is. Like, do you have approximate square footage? And then I guess the other second question, just so I got the mic, is how often are the seniors using it? Like, kind of daily, hourly? You know, monthly, we said monthly meetings, and then it gets used by other, used by other groups, but yeah, just a bit.
It is used for something generally most every day by other groups. We do have activities that take place in there. We do hold our meetings. We have discussions and meet with other groups and agencies in the community. We have been making an extra special effort in the last few years, excuse me, to reach out into the community and be a part of what it has to offer for seniors. We want to work with the other people. We need some place to work from. And I think we've made great steps in the last few years, and it's just disheartening to see that this might take place and kind of erode our efforts. I can't answer to the space. Can you tell them, Mr.
900 square feet.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and thank you very much, Mrs. Marks, for coming today. I appreciate and understand the need for space in the community for residents to connect and be together. You spoke about a suitable alternative space. Like, what would that look like? I'm just curious what that would look like for the group.
It would look similar to what we have now. We have a place to relax, we have a place to carry out activities, we have a place we can sit and have a chat, coffee. This is what seniors need. We've done the work up to this point. Now we need to be able to reap the benefits of those years and do things that are appropriate for us. We're not going to be out, it's not a 9-to-5 job for us anymore, but we're still working.
Thank you for that. And I guess my next question would be for administration. Just curious what the around the lease, what that looks like. Are we have a policy around relationship with external groups. I wonder if you're in that, if we have that policy with this group. And I'm also curious, how often is the space used for what it's being used for right now?
Your worship, through the Councillor Hall, I can't answer the last question, but as far as the lease, because the wildfire interrupted our normal operations, there actually isn't a signed lease right now. The lease is a nominal $1 a year for that use of that space as they see fit. I think there was a middle question.
Just around policy at 104, just wondering if we entered that with this group.
This group doesn't policy F-104 doesn't really apply to this group, because we haven't gone there. So policy F-104 could apply to this group if we were charging them rent. But because we're not charging them rent, there is no real partnership that would make F-104 readily apparent as the main venue to go through with this group. We could, that could be a thing we could look at in the future for sure, but we haven't gone there yet.
And wondering how often the space is used right now for municipality, and is there an option to share?
Your worship, through to Councillor Hall, so certainly there is an opportunity to share. There are several opportunities to share. As Ms. Marks described, this group is not interested in that other than us using their space on their terms. So when I say that there's an opportunity to share, there are very good ideas from the seniors that would allow them to stay in that space and offer some flexibility to the community, to the municipality. Those shared spaces, those shared opportunities would not change our equation, like as far as the needs that we have as a municipality. So it would be great, it would be awesome to have some partnerships such as that. The need that we have wouldn't be met by.
If I may just follow up, what is the room being used for right now?
Oh,
So, Your Worship, I can take over for directory. So at this time, the room is being exclusively used by the seniors. When the return center for residents moved out of Commemoration Park, there was a limited time where that operation was inside using the senior space, and so they're displaced during that time. But since then, the space has been returned to the seniors, although we haven't been able to guarantee what its for future use would be. So I think that that's the central question, is there's some uncertainty to the seniors, as they don't have an ongoing lease, and the municipality does have some questions about whether it's the most effective utilization of space given some of the other demands the municipality has. So that's the discussion that we're having.
Thank you for that.
Deputy Mayor Mother.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation, Ms. Marks. One thing that's a little disheartening to me is this situation being referred to as a problem. I don't want it to be viewed as a problem or seniors as a problem by any means, and I don't want to add cliche to it, but obviously through some discussion, there are opportunities for solutions here. And, I'd like to promote and explore all opportunities that might be within the confines of municipal property or other groups in the community to at least give the seniors a similar situation or room that they have now into exploration on that. So
Can I speak further to what I've said?
Go ahead.
We have a lot of seniors lost their homes, a lot are displaced, and they want to come home. And we want them to come home. But we would like to be able to provide them with the stability that they knew and that they're expecting. When they come back, they get displaced once, they don't need to be displaced again. We want to be able to give them that comfort that they knew, and it's going to change. We're going to have to change how we operate. We want to be able to provide more. So give us that opportunity. Don't put us on the sidelines and put us somewhere where it's not going to work.
Councillor Callahan.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I attended the meeting yesterday and I've also seen the space. It's 900 square feet. We're not going to house a lot of staff in there. Personally, I've worked a lot with the seniors, especially in the last 3 years on council. And I think it's important that seniors keep their space. It's important for our displaced seniors that they come back. It's important for their mental well-being. And the seniors are willing to work with other groups to also use their space. And I think we need to look at other office space. We have 20 new hires. 20 new hires is not going in that space. It's an activity center. Seniors are part of the activity center. They have space that has windows, to see the kids come and go from daycare. They meet people in the activity center. It's a perfect space for them. Yesterday we talked about Alpine Summit, and Alpine Summit was willing to stand up. However, they can't guarantee 7 days a week entrance into Alpine Summit, because that's the residents of Alpine Summit. They have only 2 spaces where they have activities and they have exercise classes. In this, where they have turnkey, they can go in there 24 hours a day, so if they want to meet and go over there, they can. And I don't know where we're gonna find that for them in town, because that's what they need. And it was amazing there yesterday to see young seniors. I even felt old. But a lot of people attend, they go there to chat. It's good for mental well-being, and I think we need to leave them that space and help administration find offices somewhere else.
Other questions for Councillor Marks, Councillor Wilson?
I think my question is more for administration, and can you just clarify for the public, like, what amount of space are we in need of? How much staff are we trying to accommodate? And what's the real benefit and desire, like, what's the real attraction on taking over the seniors rather than us finding another place? What works there better than others?
Sure, Your Worship, for Councillor Wilson. First, I want to thank Director Reed for meeting with seniors yesterday and for the seniors meeting with Director Reed. I think the intent is to find out sort of really some of the questions the council is asking about what their, the specifics of their utilization are. We'd be happy to work with them, because then I think similar to the question Councillor Wilson's asking about what the municipality needs, it helps understand what the seniors need as well. So specifically for the Muni, obviously, I think a lot of the focus in the community has been around the Jasper Recovery Center. That actually is not the primary driver of the discussion. The JRCC is currently working with Government of Alberta on seeing how much space they can consume in the provincial building. That, of course, relies on the Jasper Education and Employment Center being willing to scale their operation. My understanding is that their programming has been somewhat reduced. That may return, that there is some excess capacity in the provincial building, and so the province is working with us on that. We see an opportunity to locate the JRCC in that, but again, that relies on some sharing from the Jasper Education and Employment Center. That is under exploration right now. For the municipality itself and our general operations, at 627 for community development, the other part of the provincial building, we currently have 4 staff sharing 2 offices. The 2 boardrooms have been committed to being offices for another 8 people. We also have agencies like Service Canada and Red Cross that pop in from time to time and use office spaces in 627. That will bring another 2 to 4 people on an occasional basis when those agencies come to provide service in Jasper. We also have another 2 staff that will be coming to 627 shortly, and we have a grant application for additional outreach workers in 2025. So that'll be another likely 3 that will be coming to 627 in March of next year. In the library here, we have 2 staff who've already converted the committee room that's just adjacent to council chambers. It's housing 2 staff there, and so we no longer have that committee room. At the Emergency Services Building, our 2 captains will be sharing 1 office downstairs, and the upstairs training room is now going to be an office for open office space for 3 to 4 staff, as we've had to use those private dorm areas, which we had converted to offices previously. Due to the change in the way our fire service is going to be delivered, we're going to need that space for firefighters. So now our firefighter training rooms are becoming offices. In the activity center in our finance department, we have 3 people sharing 1 office and 2 desks, including our director of finance and administration, who is one of those people sharing the desk. Our housing coordinator and energy and environment manager both work from home. And there are a couple of other additional spaces that are going to be a part of the recovery effort, including additional IT coordinator, an additional HR coordinator, who will work as a part, they won't work out of the JRCC office, they'll be a part of a regular municipal operation, just that we have so much more demand on our organization that those people, as a result of recovery, that those people are going to be added. So we'll have 2 IT coordinators. I think right now our IT coordinator has space in the basement of the activity center. So they can say, I don't have that, and we haven't yet totaled sort of what our total office need is. We do have our strategic facilities plan, which presented some average space numbers. Administration could take that average space number and run it across our current complement of staff, get a number, kind of like you're asking, Councillor Wilson. That's an overview of the space pressures that we're seeing in the regular municipal operation outside of the Jasper Recovery Center, which is also working to share some space with the Education and Employment Center.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and thank you, Councillor Keller, for your words. It put things into light for me, as I'm not quite there yet, but I'm not far off from being able to use the seniors lounge. My question is, how many seniors are in society?
Society now has 175 plus members. And it's interesting when you talk about not being there yet, our age group is 55 plus. And so we like to think that we have seniors in training and seniors that are experienced. And we feed off each other, we complement each other, we learn from each other, and we just make things better for the seniors. We have to look after ourselves because you kind of lose your place once you become a senior, you're retired, you don't go have kids in school. You lose your place, you lose relationships. You don't know who people are anymore because kids walk by your house and you have no idea who they are. You just have a different position in life. So that's why it's important that we're able to get together as a society, as a seniors group. We don't have to be a society. We're just a group of people that want to meet the needs of seniors. So we don't cater just to ourselves. We're kind of the base. That's where we get a little bit of money because we charge a little membership. That's it. The rest is all just promotional. Well-being, just living out the last years of our lives in a comfortable manner.
Well, please save me a seat in seniors.
Deputy Mayor Porter.
Thank you. I'll never claim to be a good problem solver, but I automatically go into that mode when there's, an opportunity for a solution. And so I'm not going to prescribe anything or verbalize any of my thoughts at this moment. I'm just curious, at this point, what are the hours of availability for the current space? Is it 9 to 5? Do you have evening meetings?
Well, as it was mentioned at this moment, excuse me, it's hours for 24 hours a day.
Okay.
So we can monitor that space, and we can work with people, we can alter, we're flexible. We don't, the one thing that is definite, we have a meeting once a month. We have bridge that takes place once a week for sure. And there's other people that come in small groups. It's their contact groups, their place of comfort. So they've got that opportunity to go there and just relax and do what you do when you get older.
Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation, and council has asked a lot of questions. I usually just have one question for potentially both yourself and administration. As that space is in a very key position in the community, there would be ad hoc meetings that may be scheduled or maybe scheduled a week out. We've got a lot of demand for working office space, and having a working boardroom or an empty boardroom is also not maybe the best use of space. But how flexible is the opportunity that as a potential meeting space for various municipal committees and groups as the need may come up over the next 18 to 24 months?
Well, as a result of what has taken place in Jasper, we haven't really had a chance to regroup and look at where we're at, as well as many other people have not. So I feel I don't think I speak on behalf of our group, that we would be prepared to sit down with you and have a look at our schedule. And as I said, we are flexible. We can work around your schedule and ours to try, just to try and make things work. It's all part of being community, I guess.
And just as a follow-up, recognizing that there are regular activities that occur in the room, having that option to have a ready meeting space close by, might be very helpful. As we work through this next, as I say, 18 to 24 months. I don't know if there'll be a permanent long-term solution today, but I think some opportunity for flexibility is probably the best way to move forward.
And I agree, and I feel as long as we have the key to the room, we're prepared to work with you, and I think we can make some concessions over it. We all know there's gonna be changes and different needs, and we're quite willing to see what we can do to help you, and you can help us.
Well, thank you all for your questions. Thank you, Mrs. March, for your presentation. I just had a couple of observations. Firstly, your comment, and I can't necessarily remember exactly the word that you used, but you talked about isolation and seniors being somewhat sidelined and want to be engaged. And certainly I encourage that. And for all of your membership, I can't tell you that there are at least 3 on council who are experienced seniors. Although we may have no experience as part of the senior society. But if any of your members want to get more engaged, there's an election this time next year. And there is a role for seniors in the community. It's not only on council, but it's elsewhere. And from my observation, seniors have been engaged in our community. So I don't necessarily accept that at some age, you stop being engaged, even though you don't know the names of the kids anymore, which is always been the case. You mentioned early on about council revisiting this issue. I assure you that it won't be a revisit. Council hasn't made a determination. You don't have to go back and look at the decision we've made. We understand that you have had discussions with administration, but that is not based on a council decision, so we're not going back to revisit, but I think there's a willingness certainly to visit the issue. You mentioned, I think, that this was the 3rd or 4th time, and I agree. I could probably name each of the either municipal managers or CLOs that were in the chair at the time. And that is because, as you indicated, the initial opportunity for that space, you, I think, identified this back to 1974, so 50 years ago. A lot has changed, as you indicated. Your initial, or the senior society initial dealings were with a school district, which no longer exists. There was no municipal government at the time. 50 years on, needs have changed, and I wonder whether the senior society has projected its own needs over time. If you have 175 members now, that space is not sufficient, although I appreciate that they don't all show up. But as our population ages, as it is, you will have an increasing number of visitors. And so I invite you to consider your own needs and whether that space will be adequate 10 years from now. And I just wanted to speak about shared space, and you seem open to that. I'm not sure that this is a question of concessions. It is a question of collaboration and sharing space. We have such limited space in this community, regardless of other changes that may be forthcoming. We have a boundary that's fixed in federal legislation, and that's not changing. And we all know how precious land is in this community, and we have to find ways to share it. I will say that you mentioned the current renovations. I know that when we were considering the renovation plan for the activity center, a change in the senior space was contemplated, but it was not well received. And it was not continued. When we built this building, we had proposed to the senior society space in this building. That was not well received. They prefer to stay exactly where we are. It's not like this issue has arisen because of the fire. It has been a long-standing issue, and it's based on the fact that we face an issue with very limited land for any purpose in this community. So again, without asking for concessions, I look forward to continued discussions based on a common willingness to assist the community in any way that we can. And that includes, of course, seniors. But we do not have space necessarily to give everybody dedicated space. We will have to find ways, I think, to collaborate and find opportunities for shared space. But I think council is, my assessment, prepared to enter into this discussion. So I look forward to continuing it with you as a representative of the senior society and other members of your society. Yes, we want those seniors who have been displaced to be back, but we need a recovery team to get that organized. It is important that they come back to as much normality as possible, but the overriding question is to have the Joint Recovery Coordination Center work on getting them back first. And unfortunately, we need some space for that, and we are challenged. So I thank you for your presentation and look forward to continuing to work together.
Could I make one more comment?
You may.
Excuse me. Yes, recovery is the issue, and as I said, we want to be part of that recovery plan, and we can play our part on behalf of the seniors and work with them. The other thing you mentioned is that space is prime space, but that did come into being in 1974, and our seniors population has increased quite dramatically during that period of time, and we've made it possible to work out of that space and do what we want to do as a society, as a group of seniors, as a means of looking after ourselves, because we have to be our own stewards, I guess, for want of a better word, because there's too many other things in the community that do take priority over the seniors, and that's fair, but just give us the chance to work among ourselves and make our lives better.
Understood. Thank you for your presentation. Might I suggest that a councillor make the motion to receive presentation for information? This was on the record. Councillor Mellon? Any debate? All those in
As an active senior, I do think that motion.
All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you again, Mr. Parks. We are still on agenda item 4, and we do, as I indicated earlier, welcome members of the community to address council at this point on our agenda, focused on items on the agenda. So if there's anybody else that wishes to speak, Mr. Mirovich.
Hi. You need me to come up or you hear me?
Please do come up.
Oh. I'm a recent senior, retiree, and I know that myself personally, I don't do a lot of time over at the senior center, except occasionally helping with my wife making a snack for the seniors. And my only concern is that this is the 4th time that you guys have tried to take that space. And each and every time you cry, we need office space. We're talking it's been 20 years. You would think sometime in that 20 years, some guy would have an idea that maybe we should build some office space instead of bothering the seniors every 5 years. And that's basically, to me, a failure of management, not a failure of the seniors. So is there any specific reason that you guys haven't built any offices in the last 20 years? finances, no vision. Pray for the senior center. I don't know. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wilson?
Mr. Marilovich, I'd just like to respond, only because it's a bit offensive when you say you guys. We are representatives of the community, we're representatives of you, you are part of this community.
I'm thinking more as the municipality, not the council. Because the municipality is the ones that are running for office, not the council.
Who are doing the work for you and us, right?
Okay, for us. Us don't build no office space, but us need offices. It makes no sense to me. You need them built instead of taking. Any question?
No, thank you for that, and it sounds like then, if a budget request comes forward to build office space somewhere in the community, you would be in support of that, because there is always a budgetary implication, but I saw a big thumbs up, thank you for that. All right, before I leave, agenda item 4, delegations, I will give one last call. Mr. Marks?
I have one piece of information to pass on to Kristen. Status, just about, yeah, sorry, did I forget the pass number? It's online. My phone I use, she can't participate.
These are scary.
Yeah, they are, no breaks on them. Just one thing, when I was, searching for space for the men's shed a year ago, one of the places that I tried to convince to give us space was the post office. There's 2,000 square feet of empty space in the basement of that post office. It was empty a year ago, I'm sure it still is. Anyway, that's just information for you when you are hunting for space. Thank you.
Thank you for that, appreciate it. Deputy Mayor DeMora.
Just want to make note of Mr. Mark's shirt because you can't see that on TV, but it says legend, husband, dad, and grandpa. So I think for a lot of those are check marks for a lot of people in the community. But I wanted to thank everybody for coming out as well. Messages are received and look forward to further conversation. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you. I have a question for administration around, Mr. Mark's comment on the post office. Are we able to access that basement space?
Your worship, for Councillor Hall, well, first off, I wasn't aware of it until now. It's certainly something we can investigate, but obviously the post office and the Canada Post would be in charge of the use of that space, not the municipality.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. I will move us along then to agenda item 5, correspondence, of which there is none on the agenda. And Mr. Gibbon, there is nothing to bring to council's attention. That takes us to agenda item 6, new business. Land use planning and development legislative update. Mr. Gibbon, this is your domain.
Yes, your worship, happy to provide this report today. This is an information update, and so the motion is the council receive the update on land use planning and development authority transfer from Parks Canada to the municipality for information. By way of background, council will know that this has been a particular focus of the municipality for extended period of time, but specifically this term, council strategic plan recognized a priority around taking active and strategic steps to advance Jasper's interests, including the acquisition of land use planning and development authority, and pursuing the acquisition of tools and authorities to enhance service delivery, equity, and affordability. So those were in council strategic plans since the start of this term. Council acted on those priorities when in July of 2022, Municipal Council formally requested the delegation of Land Use Planning and Development Authority in writing to the CEO of Parks Canada, Ron Holman. This was the first official step on that journey. Over the course of the next couple of years, the municipality and parks formed a joint administrative working group to explore the issue and understand what would be entailed in a transfer like that. And as council will know, following the wildfire, there was significant movement on this file. On September 27th, Bill C-76 was introduced in the House of Commons and received unanimous consent from all parties to move through an expedited process. The bill proposed amending the Canada National Parks Act in order to provide Jasper with the same level of land use planning and development authority that is currently exercised by the town of Banff. The bill was passed in the Senate on October 3rd and has gone, as I understand it, to royal assent. So essentially the Canada National Parks Act has been amended. This does not mean, though, that Jasper immediately becomes the development authority within the town site. So administration thought it was worthwhile to bring the council an update on the required next steps so the council and the community would be aware of what that process would look like. So as I said, the changes by Bill C-76 have been made, but that is essentially a prerequisite to a number of further steps that still need to happen. The agreement for the establishment of local governments in Jasper needs to be updated and amended. We would do that in collaboration with Parks Canada, work through those amendments to recognize the municipality's right to exercise those land use authorities. That updated agreement would need approval by provincial cabinet through an order in council. And then following those two steps, so essentially the updating of the agreement, which would give the municipality access to the land use and planning section of the Alberta Municipal Government Act. The first step the municipality would need to undertake would be the adoption of statutory documents such as a land use bylaw and a municipal development plan. Administration has a strategy for how to do these things and how to do them rapidly. But there are a number of steps before sort of we can formally flip the switch, so to speak. In anticipation of the change, the municipality has been preparing by adding key resources, as council know. Spring of this year, we added our new Director of Urban Design and Standards. And since the wildfire, we've hired 4 planner positions to strengthen our capacity in planning and development areas. That team has been actively engaged with Parks Canada in reviewing motif and the current policies respecting land use in Jasper, with an eye to making rapid updates that we can do while we're still under the current regime where Parks Canada holds the pen on land use planning regulations. So we are actively informing that discussion, and more information will be coming forward to council shortly. The intention, though, is to update the regs to enable a faster rebuilding. The municipality and parks are also collaborating on exploring the opportunity to implement an online permitting system, which will further speed up applications for people wishing to do rebuild. And the real benefit of the process that we're in with parks right now is that essentially there's a screen of where the service happens behind the screen, and the public are on the front side of that screen, sort of, walking up to the counter to get the service. In the end, respecting that there's these other steps, municipal administration and parks are both committed to ensuring that what happens behind the screen, the mechanics of who's got the authority and when, will have no bearing on anybody's ability in front of the screen to apply for a permit. We really foresee it being a seamless transition. And that online permit system is just an example of that. A resident, leaseholder ultimately may go and submit their application online, and it may come back signed by a Parks Canada official in the near term. And then early in 2025, those may start to be signed by a municipal official. Again, really being seamless and transparent to the end user, sort of almost where the level of authority is irrelevant. That's all on the near term. The municipality, once we are have fully received all those authorities and those other steps are taken, would engage in a longer process of doing a full review of the municipal development plan or community plan. The leading thought right now is that we would in essence adopt the 2011 Community Sustainability Plan as our municipal development plan, and that we would be able to adopt the updated, soon to be updated Parks Canada regulations as our land use bylaw. And that we'd be able to do that very rapidly. And then we would be able to undertake a regular public engagement process over the course of a number of years to do a holistic review of both those documents. Again, that would be a longer process. And all of those steps would be focused on ensuring that none of them get in the way of residents being able to do their building. So administration is recommending that council receive this report for information. We wanted to ensure that it was on the record for the public and for council, given this was such a strategic focus of council for this entire term. And that it's important that the public understand that there are a number of steps that happen before that legislative switch actually gets flipped. But that none of those steps will act as a barrier to anybody proceeding with any redevelopment in the community. Your worship, I'm happy to answer any questions. We've attached a copy of Bill C-76, which as you can see is a very short amendment to the Canada National Parks Act.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gibbon. Questions from councillors? Councillor Wilson?
When does it go to for royal assent? And I just want to confirm that if that was quick, the superintendent would still have the power to make adjustments to interim changes that we are working on.
Your worship, for Councillor Wilson, so I'm not exactly certain on the federal process. I know your worship's been watching that quite closely. My understanding was that following through reading it, then went on to essentially get the royal assent and to be signed into law. I don't know exactly what that process looks like. And yes, in any case, until the updates to the agreement for the establishment of local government is made, the municipality would have no authority under the Municipal Government Act for land use and planning. And so it's it relies on all of those steps being completed before the authority is transferred. And so up until that final step is concluded with the municipality adopting a bylaw and the municipal development plan, parks would still have sort of ultimate authority under the current practice.
Deputy Mayor Timona.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to CAO Gibbon. I'm just referring to Bill 76 and the information that we have in front of us. If you could please, just because I've been made aware of maybe some double negative potential within the wording. And just for clarification, because we do have people from the media watching, as well as community members, and just if you could provide some clarity on section 35 of the document and with the preamble of number 9, and what those sections under 35.1 A, B, C, D actually mean to our processes.
Your worship, thanks, Councillor Demoto, for the question. I'm smiling because it's like, okay, we'll see how the CAO is interpreting federal legislation, and I'm sorry, like, get to show that I've done my homework. So my understanding is that there are a number of parks communities defined within the Canada National Parks Act. The Canada National Parks Act specifically says that, here's how planning happens in park communities. Jasper and Banff are both parks, by definition of the act, are both park communities. But there's a bunch of regulations that apply to all park communities. And in essence, what section 35 says is that those things don't apply to Jasper anymore once Jasper takes these other steps. So there are other regulations like the National Parks building regulations and the National Parks sign regulations that will continue to apply in other park communities. It just won't apply anymore to Jasper because Jasper's land use bylaw and our control would supersede those. But they continue to apply in those other park communities.
And that includes limiting regulations here in our community. We'd have some authority over that. And I use the term some.
So, yeah, it's important to understand, there's been the transfer of authority has been a discussion in Jasper for a long time, probably for as long as the senior space has been being discussed. But the community needs to understand, what BAM does and doesn't have. Ultimately, being located within a national park means that the federal government will always have some level of authority. My understanding is that in BAM, the superintendent still signs off on the land use bylaw. And essentially exercising the federal minister's authority, a delegated authority. And so there is a discussion between the municipality and Parks Canada on an ongoing basis, whenever the municipality makes updates to their land use bylaw or other procedures, but it is at that sort of higher order level of Parks being supportive of the planning framework the municipality develops and approves, and then the municipality administering that framework. So I think we should all appreciate that it doesn't mean that Parks Canada doesn't have any influence or any say on zoning regulations or land use bylaw in Jasper. They absolutely will continue to, as they always have had in Banff. It means though that the driver of those regulations, the creator of those regulations, and the implementer of those regulations will be the municipality.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate that clarity, and for the sake of everybody, I understand better now.
Councillor Calgren.
Thank you, Mayor, and Chief Mr. Gibbons. So when we started this endeavor, we had talked about that it was residential coming over then commercial, but we want to have the same rights as that we will have both residential and commercial under.
Your Worship, for Councillor Pellegrini. So as council know, over the course of the last couple of years, there had been some discussion about an extended and phased in approach where there would sort of be a gradual ramping up of authority. In essence, this approach says we'll do everything at once, which I think has some benefits. It does mean that we've had to ramp up a little bit faster than we might have expected. That said, Parks Canada is also ramping up their development approval capacity, so there's a good partnership there. I think the real benefit is that we can look at the issue comprehensively. I think it would have added another layer of complexity to say, okay, well, you go to the town for this part of planning and development, but you go to park, continue to go to parks for this other part. So what we'll have is a clear dividing point in time where, prior to a date sometime in the early part of 2025, parks would have the authority, and following that date, the municipality would have the authority. Again, understanding that for the end user, the applicants, it really should be quite seamless. But in terms of that transition, there will be multiple stages of transition over multiple years.
So if I understand, your recommendation is that we adopt the 2011 plan, and then we current planning and development that Parks Canada is approving. Will we have stakeholder input into that?
So I want to be clear that I was really just speaking to what we see as the process at this stage. So certainly our Director of Urban Design Standards, Director Sanders, will be leading that process. And so I'd like her to be able to speak to exactly what we see that being. But again, I wanted to make the point for council and the community that the task of developing a land use bylaw and a municipal development plan, those, for everybody that has some experience in them, those are multi-year processes. And we didn't want to leave the impression that this change would have to wait multiple years while we go through a broad community engagement process. The municipality is committed to undertaking that process, but following the transfer of authority, we need to find a way to do that quickly. And there is lots of precedent from other municipalities where in another area in Alberta, outside of a national park, frequently municipalities will annex area, an urban municipality may annex a land area from a rural municipality. It's common, and there's lots of precedent for the urban municipality to essentially adopt the rural municipality's land use bylaw provisions until such time as the urban municipality undertakes the effort to do holistic review. So we would be applying a similar process where we adopt pre-existing regulations, use them, and then we would be able to take a longer period of time to do that holistic review. I also do want to address something that you said, Councillor Keller. You said the municipality adopting the current regulations, And I just want to reiterate that the municipality and parks are working really closely right now to update a whole host of the regulations to help speed redevelopment. And so what we would likely be adopting would be the recently updated regulations as our new municipal bylaw.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman.
Deputy Mayor DeWart.
Just for some clarity on the regulations, if I may, your worship, through you to CAO David. When we refer to the regulations and update, are we still currently working under the 1967 regulations that were adopted at that time?
Your worship, for Councillor Demota, I feel like there's probably two people on council that can answer that question better than me. But my understanding is that we may actually be operating under some more recent interim regulations. So there's interim policies that have been, I'm not sure if adopted is quite the right term, but my understanding is that we're not currently working under all of the 60s era items, that there have been some updates since then. But they haven't had the effect of changing the Canada National Parks Act. So they're, parks has worked for, I think, at least a few decades under what are essentially interim regulations.
Thank you.
If I might be so bold, as to offer my view of that, you're absolutely right that the legislative change, the amendment to the National Parks Act, where it says that once the municipality of Jasper adopts a bylaw, those other regulations will cease to apply. That is a reference to the 1968 Town of Jasper zoning regulations. The reason this works, in my view, is because we have been for the last 19 years under such an unusual circumstance. So the suggested regulatory change in 1995 never went through process, never got adopted as regulation. And so we have been, Parks Canada has been applying the not yet regulations as policy at the local level. So they know what the regulation was intended to look like, but it is not formal regulation. It's being applied as policy at the local level, which means that we don't need a regulatory change, which otherwise we would have to do, and this would have been so much more complex. In fact, the policy can be, because it's applied at the local level, can be changed at the local level. And that allows this to work in this most unusual circumstance. We are now grateful that we are governed by a policy administered at the local level, which could be changed at the local level, which allows for a smooth transition. So to the extent that administration is already working with Parks Canada to find ways to adapt the existing policy to the new requirements, then that can be the policy that applies until we come up with a bylaw which effectively adopts the revised policy. This could not have been scripted. It is just so unusual, but in these odd circumstances, in my view, it works for us.
Let me follow up. There may be two people on council that understand that, but only one that can describe it that well. Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Gibbon? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify some, probably some misinformation in the community that's floating around out there about the new positions in planning that are added. It's been brought to my attention that we're hiring municipal staff, people at large with no experience, and some of the time it's taken to get these processes in place, or because we're training people that don't have any experience in planning. And I just wanted to have that publicly addressed if possible by our CEO. And I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, David. I just want to ensure the community that we are effectively in the process or have people with experience in planning to help these processes move forward with Parks Canada.
Your worship, I appreciate the question, and I can confirm the municipality is indeed hiring experienced planners. I was just looking to see if I could quickly find. So we currently have 3 registered planners on staff. So our director of urban design and standards is a planner who's worked both in municipal government in multiple provinces, as well as in private practice with her own. She's been a president of a provincial or national planning body, you know, for their planners, professional planners. And I would hazard a guess. I'm sorry, I'm doing some quick looking. We probably have a combined, I'm going to say 40 years of planning experience on municipal staff now. And I'm just going by planning experience, which probably doesn't do justice to some of our new staff members, who are, let's see, registered planners, architectural technologists, bachelors of architecture. So pretty qualified people. We're also looking, and again, working in a number of different provinces across Canada, Ontario, certainly Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, to my knowledge, in planning roles in different municipalities. And I understand that our team is also looking to supplement that with more local knowledge, if that's possible. And so the hiring for a couple spots continues. And then as we go through the transition over the next 4 years with Parks, we'll look to build out that team even further in the development officer area.
That's good, that satisfies my question. I appreciate that, and again, I apologize for putting you on the spot, but again, well addressed.
If there are no further questions for Mr. Gibbon, I will entertain a motion, but I would like just to respond. Councillor Wilson asked a question early on about royal assent, and royal assent was granted the same day that the Senate paid third reading, which I think was Wednesday of last week. So it is the law of the land. Might I have a motion then that council receive the update on the transfer of land use planning and development authority from Parks Canada to the municipality of Jasper for information? Deputy Mayor Demota.
I so move.
Any debate? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.2, which has been added to today's agenda, the request of, well, the approval of council for that request of Deputy Mayor Demota. Update on debris removal. So if you have a specific question for administration, that would be the time.
I do, and just to ask for an update on where we are with the Elliston processes in the community, and maybe just to clarify some terms such as backfill, what that means, and whose responsibility that is, and some of the processes involved with that. And I guess, and then ladder, what the fencing means throughout the whole process, and is the blue fencing that's in the community going to be removed at any point during this backfill process? It's just, I think, it's just to clarify some misunderstandings there. And then further updates if you have any on where we are.
Sure, thanks, Your Worship, for Councillor Demota. So in consultation with Director Park, I understand that the tender for subcontractors for debris removal closed last week. Director Park told me that they expect that Elliston will have some pricing information towards the end of this week. So I imagine either towards the end of this week or into next week, that information would start to be out in the public. I know there's been a lot of concern and a lot of likely uninformed information floating around about the relative cost for debris removal. So I think we'll be able to provide more specificity to the public over the course of this week and next. With respect to the fencing, so the municipality, so those are all workplace sites. The municipality is subject to Alberta Occupational Health and Safety, so provincial regulation for how we manage safety on sites that we're in charge of. And at this time, everything behind the blue fence, the municipality is responsible for and liable for it, frankly. And that's why there has been a need for tight control and ensuring that people are aware of the hazards and that anybody that goes behind the fence is properly equipped. The municipality has a duty of care and responsibility under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And that's why groups like Team Rubicon specialize, they understand those regulations and requirements, why they were allowed to go behind. Well, maybe other types of access are more tightly controlled because essentially we're liable for anything that happens on the other side of that fence at this time. Shortly, when Ellis Don takes over the debris removal process, they will become the prime contractor on those sites and they will take over that liability. They will still be subject to Alberta Occupational Health and Safety Standards, which govern how work sites are maintained and controlled for the safety of the public and for the safety of workers. And any contractor who is doing work on behalf of any leaseholder would be subject to the same regulations. So I think that that's really important to understand. I appreciate that people are looking for options to solve some of their own challenges and maybe looking to see if they can hire their own contractors. That is possible, although administration would suggest that the greatest cost efficiencies will absolutely be had by participating in a large debris removal through Ellis Don, because any individual leasehold would have to still meet those same high standards of Alberta Occupational Health and Safety around the site. So having a friend that has equipment that's willing to help is a great idea. It's nice to know, but that friend will also have to comply with those standards in legislation and then accept that liability and risk. So people should just be aware of that. Those occupational health and safety standards are the ones that would drive any need for backfilling of a site while it was, prior to its sort of reconstruction. My understanding is that will be site dependent. Some of the sites are relatively flat and, it may have a limited foundation that wouldn't present a particular risk. And that may be seen differently by the OH&S inspectors than a site that, had a whole bunch of grade changes and a very deep foundation and basement, and that may require some level of backfilling. I certainly can't speak to the details of what that looks like. But those standards are driven again by Alberta Occupational Health and Safety, and not the municipality of Jasper, and not Ellis Don, and not the Jasper Recovery Coordination Center. Those standards are imposed upon us, and they're imposed for the safety of workers and the general public around these work sites.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just for a little bit more clarity, the term backfill doesn't mean completely filling a void. If there's removal of debris to a certain extent, let's use basement. Properties that have basements, for an example, any debris that gets moved. Per situation, that doesn't mean everybody has to fill that void completely to the top with soil or whatever material, to only have it removed whenever construction needs to start.
Your worship, for Councillor, I'll be a little bit cautious and certainly wouldn't want to give any wrong information. This is definitely, federal legislation. I was willing to dabble in. Provincial occupational health and safety, is maybe a little bit more of a stretch. So I would say though that, the idea of I don't think that anybody has an expectation that all of the destroyed properties will form a nice flat field that anybody can just go walking across. It's not that level of backfill. It would be, again, as I said, site dependent and up to the standards expressed by Alberta Occupational Health and Safety. And I don't believe, although I don't know for a fact, but I don't believe that that requires, complete flat surfaces. It may be certain amounts of grade so that there aren't any hazards of people falling in. Other risks might be mitigated by continued fencing in certain areas. So there are a number of different ways to create mitigations to hazards. And I would imagine that OH&S would look at the site and work with the contractor to identify the appropriate mitigation, whether it was fencing or other types of security, or whether it was, some level of backfill. So that's probably about as close as I want to get, and I can't be more specific than that because I'm not one of those inspectors.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Moore.
Just the last follow-up thing on the fencing. So just for clarity again, so the blue fencing that's up now possibly won't be there through the entirety of where it is right now to finalize building being in place on those properties.
Your worship, so the fencing was put in place by the municipality in advance of re-entry as a public safety measure. It will transition to the sort of care and control of Elliston for debris removal. And then the care of the sites, once debris removal has been completed, would essentially transfer to the leaseholder and their insurance company and their builder, who would have different responsibilities in how they control the sites. So I can't speak to the details of exactly how that will look. One thing that I can say is, practically speaking, fencing off each individual lease would require a lot more fence than fencing off sort of the way they are now. So that's in fact why the municipality took the action that it did, was to, sort of be most efficient with the fencing, sort of fence off larger areas rather than each individual lot. Over the course of the next year or so, as residents start to engage with builders to work on their property, their builder will start to become in control of their individual leasehold, and their builder would have responsibility for security on that site. Just sort of imagining construction sites, in other communities, they don't always have fencing around them. But again, I think that might be site dependent and up to individual builders how they choose to proceed.
And just to wrap up, Your Worship, thank you very much for that. For me, I appreciate the clarity and just the understanding of the responsibilities and where they lie, and just the commenting and assumptions that are being made. So I think those are valid answers, and I appreciate the questions coming from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you, Mayor. And just on the fencing, there's a rumor in town that individual property owners currently, that fencing costs will come off their insurance. But if I'm understanding what you're saying, that municipality will that up for our liability around, and that once it comes to build time, then if they choose to fence, that will become the individual's owner, or will people that have lost their homes, will that fencing come off their insurance also, as will the debris removal?
Your worship, for Councillor Kelleher. So at this time, the fencing is being paid for by the municipality as an eligible expense under the disaster recovery program. Once we transfer to Elliston, then that becomes the responsibility of the insurance companies who are undertaking a collective effort. And I would assume that it would be their responsibility to figure out how they would apportion that to individual leaseholds. But I won't presume to know exactly how they're going to go about that. Again, I'll say that it is less costly to do it the way that it's being done now. And if Elliston, once they take over the responsibility and the cost, it'll be less costly to be doing that on a collective basis than on an individual site basis.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Gibbon related to debris removal? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Wagner, go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My only question is, were similar processes followed in previous wildfire situations such as Fort McMurray and Slave Lake?
Your worship, for Councillor Wax, unfortunately, I can't speak to that. I'm going to assume that they may have been. I understand that the Insurance Bureau of Canada worked with insurance companies to do some collective response and collective actions, but I can't speak to the details of it.
Thank you all then. See no further hands, including Councillor Waxers. So I will move us to agenda item 7, motion action list. Mr. Gibbon?
Your worship, the only item that I recommend updating is the transit capital projects. Obviously, we made it through September and we're into October. Administration recommend updating that to October 2024. The outstanding item that we have to bring to you still is related to the electric bus procurement. And administration is reviewing that issue and is preparing a report for the council.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Mr. Gibbon related to the motion action list? Typically, there would be a motion to accept to approve it as presented with that as the one change for the transit capital project. Councillor Wilson, thank you for that. Any debates? Call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 8, notices of motion, of which there are none. Councillor reports. Any reports? Go ahead. Councillor Keller.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Yesterday I attended a Zoom meeting with Martin Longer MLA and the board from the Highway Association. Discussion was upgrades on the other highway for the highway, especially between Redson to Edmonton. Some of the area there is quite rough. This Friday I have a Trans-Canada Railhead board meeting, Zoom meeting at noon, and I leave tomorrow for Edmonton. I attend Asha's Northern housing meeting at Edmonton on Thursday.
Thank you for that. Other reports? Councillor Mallett.
Thank you, Your Worship, on behalf of Deputy Mayor DeMota and Councillor Hall. I'll report that we had a special board meeting yesterday with Community Futures, and subsequent to that, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to review that special board meeting at the next meeting, which will occur in 10 days from now in Hinton.
Thank you for that.
Funding, we're not.
No.
Deputy Mayor Motor. If you have a question.
That's fine, no, he can't hear me, so it's fine, I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. Other reports? I will briefly report that Mr. Gibbon and I attended a meeting of the Jasper Partnership Initiative Wednesday of last week. Most of that time was receiving a report from Director Clark with respect to general recovery efforts. There was significant discussion as well concerning the space that we will need both for workers in the community and incoming workers for the rebuild. And much of that focused around issues with Marmot Basin and its opportunity to have a workforce so that it can reopen the ski hill for the winter, which is recognized by everyone as critical to our winter offer and to the viability of our community over the long term. And so there was focused discussion on it. Not that there was necessarily resolution, but everyone is looking toward the same end, which is to recapture as much of the winter market as possible to give businesses in the community a chance to make it through to spring and start with something else again next year. Economic recovery being a critical part of community recovery. I also attended, I think, a number of Jasper Community Team Society meetings recently, and that group is working hard to move forward with unprecedented amounts of issues that it is facing, but it all seems to be working well. I was unable to attend a meeting Monday of this week. I'm not sure whether Councillor Waxer was able to attend that. It looks like she wasn't either, so a meeting that I missed on Monday because I had other commitments. And that is my report for now. If there are no further reports, we can move to agenda item 10. Upcoming events, we have the annual organizational meeting 2 weeks from today. As I have indicated, I will be absent. I haven't heard from other councillors whether there is a desire to reschedule that. I'm certainly content to have the meeting conducted by the deputy mayor in my absence. I will share the indications I have from councillors, two of whom have responded so far for committee assignments, that I'm hoping that others will respond. And I can simply share that information with the deputy mayor so it can all be attended to on October 22nd, as is currently scheduled, and that's the a will of council to reschedule, and I can't remember the date. I think there is a timeline in which we must have that meeting. And for the life of me, I can't remember when that ends, whether it extends into early November or not. I'm getting it on, but that's
Over 29th.
Deputy Mayor Demoda and then Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I always had the intention of being the first person to put their name forward for the committee assignment requests. And I even thought about it during our evacuation. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna get that far in advance, but you know, as things transpired, you know, situations in your life change, so I'm glad I didn't, but I'll get mine in as soon as possible, thank you.
You, Councillor Mellon?
Thank you, your worship. Typically we meet on the first and third and second and fourth Tuesdays, and this happens to be a month where we have an extra Tuesday thrown in. I would be happy to contemplate moving the organizational meeting by 1 week to October 29th, if that is the desire of other council members.
Thank you for that suggestion, Councillor Mellon. Councillor Calabria?
We moving forward and have it next Tuesday. I will be away the 29th. I will be representing you in Japan.
Except for any pressure.
Councillor Mellon?
Thank you, your worship. I do see we have a tentative meeting that was set prior to the fire event of the intergovernmental affairs meeting with March. I don't know if that's confirmed or not. But further to Councillor Keller MP's suggestion, if we do have that meeting, we probably will have to move next week's regular council meeting. I haven't seen anything so far regarding the intergovernmental affairs that was tentatively set 4 months ago, 3 months ago.
I haven't seen a change on that either. My own inclination, I appreciate the offers, but with Councillor Calabria being away in the 29th and issues potentially in the next week is 15th. Oh, anyway, I'm sort of inclined to leave it to the 22nd myself. Councillor Waxer?
Just that I won't be in attendance next week, but except by Zoom. But I am I've scheduled to be there by Zoom next week, but we'll be there on the 22nd and the 29th.
All right, thank you all. Unless you wish to make a motion, we'll just leave it alone. Apologize to the public for watching us eat sausage. That takes us to agenda item 10.2, which was requested to be added to the agenda by Councillor Wilson, coming under the FOIP legislation that's legal, you indicated. Just before I ask for a motion to move in camera, would you anticipate any action of council coming out of that? I will then in a moment ask for a motion that council move in camera, and I will advise those in the gallery and those watching online that there is no prospect that council will conduct other business in public once we revert to open session, other than to adjourn this regular meeting. So thank you for your attendance today, and if you're watching on our YouTube channel later, thank you for doing so. I will ask now for a motion that council move in camera at 11 a.m. Councillor Wilson, perhaps? Yes. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We shall take a brief recess and then reconvene in camera. Thank you all.